Hello everyone, Rowan here and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up. So first of all, I would really like to apologize for being so absent from YouTube for the last probably 2 or 3 weeks. I've had a lot going on and March kind of towards the end, I fizzled out a little bit on my reading. I don't know, I didn't quite get into like a reading slump. I just didn't feel like reading for a few days, and then I got into some other things, and then I wanted to do those things more than reading. It was like I knew that I had books waiting for me that I really wanted to read. I just couldn't bring myself to read them for some reason. So back to the actual wrap-up. I read about 20 books. Actually, a decent chunk of those were graphic novels. This last month I went to Emerald City Comic Con and I picked up some comics and graphic novels while I was there, which Comic Con was really cool. I dressed up as a female version of the 11th Doctor from Doctor Who and it was pretty awesome. I mean, I looked pretty cool if I do say so myself. Anyway, so I picked up some really great graphic novels there and I read those towards the end of March. And before that, I picked up some really great books that had come out. So let's get started. So the first book that I read this month was actually one for my Goodreads group. We do read-alongs and read-a-thons, and we had picked underrated books. So the book that I read with them was Of Beast and Beauty by Stacey J. I read Princess of Thorns by this author a few months ago, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't the best in the world, but I really liked it. It was super fun, so I was excited to read this one that I got from Book Outlet for like $3. And I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It was definitely not as good as I'd hoped. I love fairy tale retellings, as you guys know, because I say that all the time. But, and this is kind of a like sci-fi fantasy version, so I was really excited. And while like the writing was really cool, and obviously I liked the storyline because I like fairy tale retellings, the characters were kind of iffy and the story sometimes was kind of iffy. So it was fun to read. I mean, I think I busted it out in a few hours and it was, you know, it was decent. It just wasn't like, I didn't feel it, you know? I didn't feel the feels for this book. So it only got 3 out of 5. For the next book, I finally picked up Fallen Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes. I have been hearing so much about this fantastic series, and I got the first one from Book Outlet, I think in my last haul. And I kept putting it off because I didn't want to get really into a series, and finally I just couldn't wait anymore, and holy moly, I understand the hype, you guys. It was so good. I obviously gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I mean, I loved it. It was so awesome. It was kind of like a more young adult version of Game of Thrones, which is nice because sometimes Game of Thrones is just a little too heavy. I have to really be in the mood to read it since there's so much constantly going on, so many characters, so many points of view, so many settings. And this was kind of like a more toned down version, and I really love that. I mean, I love this book. So the next 2 books I read this month were Endless Night by Kresley Cole and, oh, let me get it, Dead of Winter by Kresley Cole. These are the 2nd and 3rd book in the Arcana Chronicles, I believe, by Kresley Cole. And I really like this series. I picked up the first book last month, I think it was actually, and loved it. It was so interesting, and I'd never even like heard of it. It's such an underhyped series, and it's so good. So I read the 2nd and the 3rd book, and I think I gave them both 4 out of 5 stars. And this one ended on such a stinking cliffhanger, you guys, it's not even funny. But right now this is definitely one of my favorite series in progress. I'm having a really good time with it, and I think if you guys haven't checked this out and you like fantasy or post-apocalyptic, romance, there's definitely some romance, I would definitely check this out. Like I said, I hadn't even heard of it, but it is very good. I was pleasantly surprised, and it's consistently good. The 1st, 2nd, and 3rd book are all really great. The next book I read was The Orphan Queen by Jodi Meadows. I think this one came out this month, actually. And I haven't read any of Jodi Meadows' other books. I know she wrote the Incarnate series, I believe, or trilogy or whatever. And I've heard really mixed reviews about it, so I just never picked it up. It didn't really sound like my cup of tea. So I picked this one up because it sounded a bit more like something I'd like. So I went into this a little bit apprehensively, but I actually like this book, you guys. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I don't have any other writings of hers to compare, but I feel like this was a pretty interesting book. I mean, I definitely had some troubles with it. It wasn't like the most amazing book ever, but it definitely was better than I expected, which is always really great, you know. This one had some really interesting characters, some really interesting, like, magic system, and the land itself, like, the world building was really cool. I was really intrigued by it. The only problem I had were some of the characters. The main character was, not my favorite. And it was one of those books that's really fun to read, but it's really predictable. And that's okay sometimes, but in this point, it was just some certain aspects were dragging out, like, oh, the big mystery, but you know what the mystery is, so it's just kind of, I don't know. It was a little slow at some parts, but I give this book 4 out of 5 stars. I actually was very pleasantly surprised. This month, I also picked up Talon by Julie Kagawa. I love dragons, you guys. I know I've said that before, but I love dragons. I really, really, really love dragons. So this book is about dragons, and dragons that have, like, human form, I guess, and they are, like, part of, you know, this war between them and this old society that slays dragons. So I just kept putting this book off and putting it off. I've read some of Julie Kagawa's other stuff, her Iron Face series, which I liked. It was kind of years ago that I read them, so. But I finally picked this one up, and I was really excited because dragons. And I did not really like it, actually. And I've heard a lot of good stuff about this book. Like, I follow Julie Kagawa on Twitter, and I feel like she's just constantly posting, like, good reviews that people have given it and stuff. Or people are constantly sending in, like, art and stuff. And so I was very excited, and I really didn't like it. It fell so flat for me. The characters were just kind of, like, lame, and there was so much romance. It was one of those books that has such potential. It has so much potential to be a really interesting book. And then the whole thing is just some, like, star-crossed lover tale, and it just drives you crazy. It drives me crazy. I ended up being very, very angry at this book. I only gave it 2 out of 5 stars, and I just was mad, you guys. It was disappointing. Disappointing. I just want a good book about dragons. Is that so much to ask? Is that really so much to ask? Apparently so. Thanks, Talon. Another book that I read this month was Salt and Stone by Victoria Scott. This is the second book to, oh geez, I can't even remember what the series is called, but I read the first one last year when it first came out, and I really didn't like it. I'm sorry, but it was an interesting sort of plot line, and there were, like, Pokemon knockoffs, which I used to play Pokemon a lot when I was younger, so it was kind of nostalgic, and it was fun. You know what I mean? It was one of those books that definitely was not the best, like, written book. It definitely didn't have the most amazing plot, but it was, you know, it was kind of fun. It was a guilty pleasure reading. However, the thing that made it stick out in my mind as one of just the most annoying books that I read last year, the main character, Tella. Holy moly, you guys. I don't think I've ever hated a girl so much. Well, okay, maybe, but the wound is fresh right now, so I want to say I hate her more than anything, but oh, God, you guys. I mean, really. So why I picked up the second book, I have no idea. I don't know. I wanted to torture myself, I guess. I think I just wanted to laugh. And that sounds really horrible, but she just is funny because she's so ridiculous. And I think I just wanted to see if the author, like, decided to try to change her and make her better, but no. Actually, this book I did not hate as much as the first one, to the surprise of everyone. So I still gave it 1 out of 5 stars, but it was slightly higher than the last book. Now, probably my favorite book I read this month, I mean, I really, really enjoyed this book. It was so good, was Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, I think? I don't know. Anyway, this book was so good, you guys. I wasn't really expecting it. Like, it was so good. I had heard that there was a love triangle, and I was really, really, like, just annoyed before I even started, knowing that I was reading a book knowingly with a love triangle, which I despise. I really hate love triangles. So this book actually was not even romance heavy at all. I mean, the romance was an aspect of it, but oh my gosh, compared to, like, the frickin' superhuman power, creepy society, weirdo oppression. I mean, just, oh. This book was so good, you guys. I really, really loved it. Definitely one of my favorite books I've read so far this year. I thought it was fantastic. So good. You guys, you should check this out. I definitely gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This month, I also read The Unbound by Victoria Schwab. This is a sequel to The Archived, which I read last month and I really, really enjoyed. And I loved the second one just as much. I thought it was so good. You guys should definitely check them out. Another kind of underrated series. Like, I don't ever really hear anybody talk about it. If I remember correctly, I gave that one 5 out of 5 stars. It's really good. It's really, like, interesting and intriguing and kind of creepy and unsettling. It was a very, very, very good book. Another book I read this month was The Sin Eater's Daughter by Melinda Salisbury. I was really excited for this book. It sounded so interesting, like a girl that anybody she touches dies, so she's like the palace executioner, and it just sounded interesting, you know what I mean? This big fantasy land, this really exciting like plot, hopefully like an interesting heroine. This book actually ended up being one of the more disappointing ones I've read this year. I was so disappointed by it. I gave it a generous 2 out of 5 stars, and even then I'm kind of having second thoughts on that. The thing that really got me was the heroine was just horrible. She was just whiny and she hated like her life and her power and how she was used. Did absolutely nothing to change it except whine and cry and be mean to people, and that's what I hate. I hate when somebody has something really awful going on in their life and they could potentially like try to change it, or it'd be a good story to see somebody like fighting the power. But instead we just get a story of a girl who is just like needy and whiny, and she just has other people just handing stuff to her. Like, she's not even the driving force behind like the plot moving forward. It's just her luckily like getting people to help her that are smarter than her, and that is so beyond annoying. Also, her power thing didn't really go in the direction I had hoped, and I didn't really like the direction it went in. And there was all these weird like random like plot things, and the villain was just bad. Yeah, I probably should have given this book 1 out of 5. I don't know why I gave it 2. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm just grumpy. The last actual book that I read this month was Half-Blood by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I've been really into Jennifer L. Armentrout lately. You guys know that. I've been like talking about her books in every month wrap up for like the last 3 months. And this is more her fantasy young adult series that I have heard a little bit about. I think it came out like a little while ago. But I read the first one and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It was definitely a little like Shadowhunter-esque, but still interesting and unique enough. Okay, and now on to my graphic novels. I read Fables Volume 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 this month, which I don't own any of them. I got them from the library, but Fables are fantastic. I got some for Christmas, the first 3 volumes, I believe. And I love them. They're so good. If you guys have never read them, you should definitely check them out. And if you're thinking that you might want to get into like comics or graphic novels or anything like that, I would recommend starting with this. This is what I started with and I really love them. They are fun, they're pretty easy to follow, the art style is fantastic, and it's about like fairy tale people, like if all the fairy tale characters were real and living in our world. So it kind of has like tones of what you know, and I definitely recommend it. I gave all of those 5 out of 5 stars. I love them. And then also this month I got at Comic-Con Saga Volume 1 and, oh, let me pick that up. Saga Volume 2, which I loved, you guys. Holy cow. Honestly, probably my favorite freaking graphic novel series like ever. Or it's so good. I can't even make words right now because I'm overwhelmed by how good it is. I love it. It's definitely more mature. There's lots of like sex, nudity, really graphic violence, stuff like that, but holy cow, amazing. I also read the third one. I don't own it, but I just got it from the library, and so good. So good. You guys should definitely check it out. Those have a solid 5 out of 5 stars on all of them. They were fantastic. Alright, you guys, those are all the books that I read in March. And most of those were like before the last week. I don't think I read a single book like in the last week of March, which is kind of upsetting. Feel free and let me know what you guys thought of any of those books if you read them, or if you guys read any fantastic books in March. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.